We finally had a major update regarding Enzo ahead of game week 9, which is going to make thousands of FPL managers a little bit worried. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the best players to buy ahead of game week 9, alongside all of those hot topics that people are deliberating right now. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure to drop a like and of course hit that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. Enough waffling. Let's get to today's video. So ahead of game week 9, we knew that this midweek was all about European football. We got Champions League Tuesday and Wednesday and Europa League and Conference League on the Thursday. Hence why I think making transfers early probably isn't the best decision. And that has come to fruition with the situation with Enzo. Currently one of the most sold players going into game week 9. I believe there's nearly 200,000 transfers out. He played last night against Ajax. 45 minutes with a planned substitution at halftime, scored a penalty, could have had another opportunity to score a second penalty but gave the ball to Estevao, and all in all looked pretty fit ahead of game week 9. So for those managers right now that are in a position where they're looking to make a midfield transfer, maybe move away from a Reinders for example, Enzo is now back on the menu, and we need to remind ourselves of why we're even considering Enzo in the first place. Now, the fixtures of Chelsea long-term are good. They're top of most of the tickers. And in the short term, Sunderland at home, Spurs away, who are struggling a little bit right now in the Thomas Frank, Wolves and then Burnley. And even after the Arsenal game, Leeds, Bournemouth and Everton, I think there is a good long stretch of fixtures that we can invest in Chelsea assets for. And importantly, the numbers for Enzo are solid. Look at the expected goal involvement that's highlighted. 0.62 goals involvement per 90 minutes. If we look at the non-pen goal involvement, that's 0.51. So even when we take out the penalty responsibility for Enzo, he's still putting up good numbers in this team. So Enzo, absolutely a great buy for game week 9. The only caveat that I want to put out there, and I've highlighted it here at the bottom, is that we are anticipating Delap to return in the foreseeable future. We've also seen Mark Gui play as the number 9. So what that might lead to is João Pedro playing in number 10 and then Enzo playing in that double pivot number 8 role alongside Caicedo. So while I think Enzo has been fantastic over the last few weeks, almost accommodating that number 10 role, I do think managers have to understand that as we progress throughout the game weeks, there is more opportunity for Enzo actually to play in a bit more of a deeper role than that of what we've seen in previous weeks, because there are options now available for Maresca, or eventually will be. So I still think he's a great buy, but just anticipate that the attacking numbers might slowly come down. However, still the penalty taker. I'm pretty certain of that. The only worry is that he gave the ball to Estevao for that second penalty. Could he do the same for João Pedro? And that's a bit of a reason why maybe keeping João Pedro this week is the right play. We know that he was banned in the Champions League. He is guaranteed to start. And the fact that Mark Gui come off at halftime, for me, kind of screams that he's going to start in game week 9 once again. So if I had to guess the Chelsea team, I would anticipate Mark Gui in the 9, João Pedro in the 10, and then Enzo playing in midfield alongside Caicedo. So that makes all three of these actually great options for game week 9. In terms of Mark Gui, I think this is a perfect example of if you're in a position where you're looking to maybe bench boost in game week 9, he is a great option at home against Sunderland, and then I would anticipate him to be once again a bench player beyond that. The issue with Mark Gui, if you're investing in him, is there might be a time where you want 3 Chelsea players and he might block you from that. So he's a very niche buy, Mark Gui, very, very short term, but I do like him for game week 9. The numbers very hard to read into because he's played so little minutes. Finally, in terms of João Pedro, this is the big one because nobody should be buying João Pedro right now. But as I said, the pros for him didn't play against Ajax, so he is fully fit and I'm anticipating him to start once again in that number 10 role against Sunderland. The problem, he's only had 2 shots in his last 4 league matches. If you don't shoot, you don't score. Whereas we've got other forwards in the league who are being ridiculously selfish for all the right reasons that are making us want to buy them. So to conclude the Chelsea assets, Mark Gui, great buy for game week 9. After that, I think he needs to be your bench fodder effectively. I don't expect minutes to be consistent beyond that moment. Enzo, a great buy. Still think he's the penalty taker, but as we saw, he may gift that to someone like a João Pedro at any moment. And I also do think Enzo's position will be deeper as we progress throughout these fixtures. João Pedro for me is a keep. you don't buy him, but I also would not be selling him this game week. I don't think the striker alternatives are good enough for game week 9 to justify the João Pedro to, Voldemada or a Mateta, who we will talk on. Keep Pedro for one more week and then allow yourself to sell in game week 10. Now, talking about some forward options that you can come away from João Pedro if you want to, these are the 3 big ones going into game week 9. We have got Bournemouth's Krupi Jr., Newcastle's Voldemada, and Crystal Palace's Mateta, all looking fantastic going into game week 9. So, very different price points from Krupi Jr. to the other two. 4.5 million forward for Bournemouth is fantastic value. Now, with Krupi Jr. right now, just ignore the underlying numbers because he's literally played one start, all the rest have come off the bench, and his numbers are completely skewed right now. These are based on per 90 minutes. 1.08 expected goal involvement per 90 is not actually what his numbers are. So just ignore the stats for Krupi. However, in terms of the fixtures coming up for Bournemouth, they're decent long term. Forest at home, which would have been better under Ange, but it is going to be Sean Dyche's Forest, which I'm anticipating to be a much more of a sterner test for Bournemouth in general. But we do need to remind ourselves that Nottingham Forest play Thursday night against Porto in a European game, which is going to obviously have a negative impact on them for this game in game week 9. So I think that probably does counteract any sort of thought process about Sean Dyche, having an incredible start in game week 9. If they didn't have the game on Thursday, I think this would be a really tough test for Bournemouth. After that, though, some tricky games. City, then Aston Villa, followed by a nice run of 3 between game week 12 and game week 14. My thought process regarding Krupi Jr. is this. I think for game week 9, you're going to get 90 minutes or at least 75 minutes because the alternatives don't really exist. And I think he really suits a Areola team. So I do think he is here to stay for game week 9. However, you're going to want to bench him in game week 10 and 11 regardless. So make sure that your squad is actually pretty set to bench him. And then if we get in a position where Krupi Jr. is actually still the number 1 starter, Evan Nielsen is anticipated to be out for 9, 10, maybe beyond that. You then get him for West Ham, Sunderland and Everton, which is just an added bonus really. So I really like Krupi as a pick, only to really make that forward spot a bench fodder. Play him in game week 9 and then almost buy him knowing that he is going to be on the bench for the foreseeable future. But I do really like him if you are freeing up funds to downgrade from someone like a João Pedro, for example. But of course, the other 2 options, if you're buying them, they are there to stay in your respective team. So first up, let's take a look at Voldemada. Of course, Champions League football played on Tuesday. Newcastle scored 3 goals, looked really good. He looked good once again, even though he didn't get on the score sheet. The fixtures of Newcastle remain really strong. Fulham possibly without Anderson, West Ham, who look pretty ropey right now under Nuno, then Brentford, Man City, and then the run afterwards. In terms of Voldemada's underlying numbers, 0.65 expected goal involvement is really, really solid. If we take out the penalty, 0.47, so still really solid numbers for Voldemada at 7.4 million. Now look at the fixture against Fulham. João Pedro at home against Sunderland versus Voldemada at home against Fulham. I actually do prefer Voldemada, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Fulham, without Anderson, are weaker. I think Sunderland have shown that they can put up defensive performances. So I think he is the better option. But do I think it is worth the transfer away from João Pedro to Voldemada this week? Probably not. I still think it is close enough not to justify the transfer over to him. But if you are going to him, I think you've got to go there and stick with him long term. I don't think the transfer from Pedro to Voldemada this week for a couple of weeks to then move away once again is worth it. So you go now or never really with Voldemada. Now in terms of Mateta, this is a big one because I really am split on this one. Going into game week 9, it makes no sense to buy him. They play Thursday night against in the Europa League, and then they play Arsenal on the weekend. Arsenal play Tuesday, so they've got 2 additional days rest on Crystal Palace. Arsenal, the best defence in Europe right now, one of the best teams in Europe. It just doesn't make any sense bringing in Mateta. Now, the numbers are ridiculous. 1.04 expected goal involvement per 90, 0.88 when we take out the penalties. It's really, really solid underlying numbers. We spoke about this before game week 8, and then he bags a hat-trick. The numbers prior to that were really, really strong. So I think Mateta's a great buy. But would I be doing Pedro to Mateta this week? Absolutely not. Yes, you might get priced out, and if that is the case, then I can justify the Mateta move. Otherwise, I think you just wait a week, allow that fixture to play out, and then from game week 10 onwards, Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, Man United, Burnley, Fulham, the fixtures are fantastic. Maybe then in game week 10, you move away from João Pedro to Mateta. I just don't think the move is this week. He could score, he could do well, but I just don't think it is worthwhile of a transfer. So to conclude, Krupi, brilliant for game week 9. After that, needs to be a bench fodder for your team. Voldemada is now or never. Mateta for me is game week 10. Finally, I wanted to quickly touch on Liverpool assets because we all know that we're coming into a really nice run of fixtures for Liverpool, but it's been the case this season where who do we actually buy? It's really strange. They spent all this money, but we can't buy anyone in FPL because we have no guarantees of minutes. So even though this section might be a case of actually people selling Liverpool, I want to just have a section where we can also consider some of these players to buy in the foreseeable future. So a few notes, because we had the Champions League game last night for Liverpool. Gakpo and Ekitike both scored in that game. Salah was benched against Frankfurt. Now, Salah was benched in their previous Champions League game as well. So I think Salah is fine for the league, especially up until the African Cup of Nations. Of course, Liverpool will have to adapt without him. And maybe Slot might find opportunities in this run to play a Liverpool team without Mo Salah, knowing that we're going to need to do this eventually, so why don't we actually try and integrate that before he does go to the African Cup of Nations? I'm just speculating there, but I do think Slot has way more options available to him than what he had last season. And of course, Mo Salah was just on a generational run last year, so there was no need to take him out of the team. Scoring 5 goals against Frankfurt maybe is an indication that there is a world without Mo Salah, but it's also worth noting anyone that watched the Liverpool game, they are still very, very ropey. I still don't think they are at all close to where they need to be, considerably. So the 3 options right now are going to be Gakpo, Ekitike and Mo Salah. I think defensively we cannot touch Liverpool. I think Szoboszlai is fantastic, but would I buy him in FPL? Probably not. I think Alexander Isak is just not worth considering. We've had Slot come out and say that there has been a hamstring injury or a groin injury for Isak, which means Ekitike even more so doubles down as a good option if Isak is going to be ruled out for a significant amount of time. Even for 3 game weeks, it makes Ekitike quite interesting. So for me, Salah is just a sell. He's too much money. The numbers are not good enough. There are good enough options out there. I think you need to reinvest that money. You can cling on to him. I do anticipate at some point he will score a goal, but is that worth keeping him? I just don't think it really is. So for me, Mo Salah remains a sell in our teams. Now, in terms of Gakpo, I think this one's gone massively under the radar. A few people have highlighted this in the past, and fair play to those that called it early doors, but 7 out of the 8 league games Gakpo has started. He's played 90 minutes in 6 of those games. He is the number 1 starter. Like, what do we need to see any more of to think, you know what, Gakpo actually is the main man in this attack, the one that Slot is actually relying on, who is actually delivering? Because Gakpo's underlying numbers have been great. 0.58 expecting goal involvement, no penalties as we know. Yes, he is 7.5 million without penalties, which is a little bit hard to justify, but with the fixtures coming up, Brentford, Villa, Takeaway City, Forest, West Ham, Sunderland, Leeds, they're good enough fixtures, and we know this Liverpool team score goals regardless of whatever position they're in. They do usually accumulate chances and score goals. So I think Gakpo is going to continue to start for this team. And if Isak is out injured, then I think Ekitike plays as the 9. I think Salah plays on the right-hand side. I think Wirtz plays in the 10. And hopefully Slot actually wakes up and plays Gravenberch and Szoboszlai together in the midfield. And I honestly do believe if Liverpool rock out with that team starts to win a lot of games in a row. Get a ball progressor in that right back position, whoever it may be, then they are cooking. I really do believe that. So I think Liverpool are going to suddenly become a team we want to buy. And I want us to remember that Gakpo is a starter. The numbers are good. And I think he is an absolute consideration for our teams. The problem with no penalties is a concern. Ekitike for me at 8.6 million. I would love to go there, especially if Isak is ruled out. But I just think there are too many forward options right now at $1 million less that offer just as much of that to Ekitike. So for me, Salah's a sell. Gakpo you can buy if you want to. I honestly do believe that. Ekitike, I would love to buy him, but they're just a bit too expensive compared to other forwards in the game. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's video, looking at the best transfers for you going into Game Week 9. If you're looking for opinions on the likes of Reinders and all, I have covered that off in my previous video, the transfer plan, so make sure you check that out. Also, a real deep dive in those Arsenal assets on my transfer plans video that I done a few days ago. I will be revealing my team selection tomorrow morning, so if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Any questions, pop them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to them. And importantly, have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.